It was common knowledge in our social circle that Adrien kept a woman who couldn't hear. He doted on her, showering her with a level of affection and material comfort that made marriage seem like the next logical, inevitable step. That woman was me. So, on the day I finally regained my hearing, a miracle delivered through a state of the art custom device, my first instinct was to rush to him, to share the incredible news. But as I approached the private club where he was meeting friends, I was stopped by the sound of their laughter, sharp and ugly, drifting from the suite. Adrien is a true master of the game, one of them slurred, his voice thick with admiration, calling out his first love's name while he's in bed with a deaf girl. It's brilliant. Another chimed in, seriously, does she not notice a thing? Adrien's laugh, a sound I had once cherished, was casual and dismissive. How could she? She's just a little deaf thing, can't hear a word. He then made a satisfied smacking sound with his lips. She's much more obedient than Evelyn ever was, though, and not nearly so fragile. She can cry her eyes out and she'll still quiet down in no time. The laughter in the room grew louder, a chorus of cruel amusement. No wonder you never get tired of her. It must be so easy to handle her with that soft temper of hers. You'd better be careful, Adrien, another warned playfully. If she ever finds out the truth, she won't be so easy to pacify. The waiter who had been guiding me to the room stood frozen, his face a mask of awkward embarrassment. He had heard it all just as I had. I slowly lowered my gaze, the joy I had felt moments before curdling into a cold, heavy stone in my stomach. I remembered all the times, in the intimacy of our bedroom, when Adrien would gently remove my old hearing aid. He would lean in close, his lips brushing against my ear, whispering things I could never make out. I couldn't hear the words, but I could feel the warmth of his breath, and I had imagined them to be the sweetest declarations of love. It turned out those tender moments, those whispered secrets, were never intended for me. They were ghosts of a love meant for someone else. The boisterous laughter continued to spill from the room, each peal a fresh stab of pain. Steeling myself, I pushed open the heavy door to the suite. The group of men inside fell silent, their heads turning in my direction. The air became thick and still. Adrien, lounging in a chair with his head propped on his hand, was clearly drunk. His unfocused gaze drifted and then sharpened, landing on the new advanced hearing aid nestled behind my ear. He didn't seem surprised or alarmed, just vaguely curious. How much had I heard? A bitter, metallic taste, like blood, filled my throat. When I finally found my voice, it came out as a raw, hoarse whisper. All of it. I managed a brittle smile. Thanks to you, this hearing aid is the best one I've ever had. It picks up everything with perfect clarity. Adrien's response was indifferent, a simple, come here. His friends watched the unfolding drama with undisguised amusement. I remained rooted to the spot, a cold wetness trickling down my cheeks from my unblinking eyes. I suppose I was crying. A slow, cruel smile spread across his face. What are you crying for? Are you that desperate to be my wife? It's not that, I whispered, the words barely audible. I thought we were in love. My eyes drifted to the simple, elegant band on his left hand. Adrien always claimed to hate the feeling of being constrained by jewelry, yet he had consistently worn the engagement ring I had personally designed for us. He followed my gaze and tilted his head, his expression one of feigned confusion. The smile on his lips was tinged with a brutal sort of innocence. Are you looking at this ring? He asked, his voice soft. That's just pathetic. It's only for show. His next words were even gentler, a silken command. Go home and wait for me. Be a good girl. I'll pretend tonight never happened. From now on, if you behave yourself, I can give you anything you want. Anything except the title of my wife. Adrien was an expert at training obedience. He knew how to deliver a sharp blow and then immediately offer a sweet reward to soothe the sting. But this time the wound was too deep. Forcing my tears back, I stepped forward and carefully slipped the ring from his finger, the one I had so lovingly placed there myself. Then, I pulled off my own matching ring. Under his suddenly shocked and wide-eyed stare, I walked to the corner of the room and tossed both pieces of jewelry into the trash can. Clara! Adrian's voice was low, his brow furrowed in a way that always signaled the onset of his anger. I just offered him a small, empty smile. Adrien, let's break up, I said, my voice steady now. This ring is too cheap for you anyway. Don't dirty your hands with it. That very night, I moved all of my belongings out of Adrian's luxurious villa. I found a job at a bar that provided both meals and a room in the staff dormitories, which was a fortunate arrangement for someone like me, a high school dropout with few qualifications. I hadn't expected to see my younger brother there. It was supposed to be his evening self-study session, a crucial time for a student preparing for his college entrance exams. Yet there he was, a boy who should have been hunched over textbooks, instead lounging in a bar, acting like a delinquent and inappropriately touching a waitress's waist. This was Leo's second attempt at his final high school exams. "Leo, isn't that girl serving drinks your sister?" one of his friends asked, pointing in my direction. Leo waved a dismissive hand. "No way, my sister is living the good life now." He puffed out his chest, a picture of misplaced pride. "You guys know Adrien, right? The heir to the Sterling Group? That's my brother-in-law." His friends oohed and awed with envy, quickly goading him on. "Well then, this round has to be on you, waiter. Bring us a bottle of your most expensive liquor." A flicker of panic crossed Leo's face. He opened his mouth to protest, but one of the other boys cut him off with a sneer. "What's the matter? Isn't Adrien your brother-in-law? You can't even afford a single bottle of liquor?" The boy laughed mockingly. "Leo, you really need to stop lying. Why would a man like Adrien ever be interested in your sister?" Leo's expression turned grim. He pulled out his phone and called me. "Clara," he said, his voice tight, "I need money for school supplies again." He gritted his teeth. "It's 3,000. I watched him from across the crowded room, just out of his line of sight, but close enough to see him. I spoke into my phone. "I'm at the place where you last saw me." He covered the phone with his hand and whispered as if sharing a secret. "I just finished my evening classes. Everyone else is heading back to the dorms, but I'm staying behind to get some extra studying in." I was silent for a moment before replying. "My salary for this month hasn't come in yet." His voice immediately sharpened with anxiety. "You're with Adrien, aren't you? Just ask him for it." Just then, a group of men at a nearby booth turned their attention towards us. "Isn't that the little brother of that deaf girl Adrien used to have?" one of them remarked. Leo's head snapped up and his eyes lit up with a pathetic sort of hope. He nodded eagerly. "Yes, I'm Clara's brother." One of Adrien's buddies, a man I recognized, looked Leo up and down with a contemptuous sneer. "Don't try to latch onto people who are out of your league. Adrien already kicked your sister out. She's just some slut who tried to act all pure and virtuous." The color drained from Leo's face, leaving it a pasty, sickly white. Amidst the ensuing wave of laughter, Adrien, who had been sitting silently with them, lit a cigarette, his expression completely indifferent. The manager, oblivious to the history unfolding in his establishment, chose that moment to instruct me to serve drinks to Adrien's table. I had no choice but to square my shoulders, take a deep breath, and walk over. Under the dim, moody lighting of the bar, the men were all laughing amongst themselves and didn't seem to notice my approach. I began to carefully pour their drinks, but one of the young men, laughing too hard at a joke, gestured wildly and knocked the heavy bottle from my hand. It crashed onto the table, and I was instantly drenched in cold, sticky alcohol. The young man closest to me, the very one whose shoes were now soaked in expensive liquor, didn't escape the spill either. Someone gasped audibly. This young man, a notorious hothead, was the first to react. He was about to point a finger in my face and start yelling, but he stopped short when he saw who I was. "Well, well, isn't this an old acquaintance?" he drawled, his eyes raking over me with a suggestive, mocking expression. "You were always so proud, weren't you? How does it feel to be out on the street now that Adrien has dumped you?" From his seat, Adrien looked up and let out a soft, low laugh. It was impossible to read his expression or guess what he was thinking. "Clara," he said, his voice lazy but carrying an unmistakable command. "Get over here and clean my shoes." The air in our little corner of the bar turned thick and silent. Just as I reluctantly bent down to comply, I heard Adrien's voice again, lazily adding a new condition. "Who are you trying to fool with that posture? Kneel down to clean them." The hot-headed friend chimed in with theatrical flair, raising his voice for everyone to hear. Do you have any idea how expensive these shoes are? You couldn't afford to pay for them, even if you sold yourself. I silently did the math in my head and realized with a sinking feeling that he was probably right. I couldn't afford them. The next moment, Adrien's hand shot out and grabbed my wrist, his grip surprisingly strong. I looked up at him, confused. Clara, he said, his voice dropping to a low murmur, just submit to me, be good, and I'll take you home. I silently and deliberately pried his fingers from my arm. Seeing me prepare to kneel and follow his humiliating order, Adrien's face darkened even further. Who are you trying to seduce with this pathetic act? You might be able to afford to lose face, but I can't. He gritted his teeth, yanked me to my feet, and pushed a full glass of hard alcohol in front of me. Drink. 1,000 for every glass. You can stop when you've paid off the damage. The scene before me began to blur, the dazzling, spinning lights of the bar reflected in my eyes as I drank glass after glass, my head growing dizzy. I could barely remain standing, my hands gripping the edge of the table for support. Did I say you could stop? Adrien sneered in my ear, his breath hot against my skin. His friends erupted into another round of laughter, their vulgar comments and jeers becoming an unbearable cacophony. I closed my eyes and was suddenly transported back in time, to the very first time I ever met Adrien. I was 17 years old then. My aunt, who had taken both me and Leo in after our parents passed away, had been killed in a car accident. Our other relatives looked down on us, whispering that we were unlucky and brought misfortune wherever we went. With no other options, I had dropped out of high school and started working to support us. One of those jobs was here at this very bar working under the table. That was when I met him. He was incredibly drunk that night, hunched over a sink in the restroom, heaving and looking like he was about to collapse. I just happened to be passing by and instinctively reached out to steady him. Adrien glanced at me lazily in the mirror, and then his eyes froze on my reflection. The very next day, after my shift ended, he was waiting for me outside. "Can I pursue you?" he had asked. I can still remember his expression so clearly. He looked a little nervous, almost shy, like a young boy experiencing the rush of first love. Over the years, I asked him so many times, why me? Why had he chosen me? Adrien would just trace the line of my eyebrows with his finger, his gaze burning with an intensity I found captivating. He would take off my hearing aid and whisper something against my cheek. I could never hear the words, only managing to catch scattered, breathy sounds. The only word I ever clearly recognized was like. It wasn't until much later that I learned the subject of that like was never me. The day I met Adrien, he had just attended the engagement party of a woman he had loved for many years. I just happened to walk by at the right moment, and I looked a lot like her. Through me, it seemed, he could possess a version of her. The unfairness of it all was staggering. If he had just been honest from the beginning, if he had told me I was only a stand-in and asked me to play a part, I don't think I would have been so deeply hurt. But he didn't. He told me he liked me. The alcohol burned through my system, making my heart pound erratically in my chest. Clutching my chest, I took a ragged, painful breath. Adrien was still watching me with that same cold, detached expression, completely untouched by my distress. He refilled my glass and spoke in a tone that was terrifyingly gentle. "Clara, tonight I am going to teach you how to be obedient again." He reached out as if to stroke my hair, but I flinched away from his touch. "We broke up," I said, my voice shaking. "This is crossing a line." I picked up the glass, ready to down it in one go and end this ordeal. But halfway to my lips, another hand grabbed my wrist, stopping me. Frowning, I looked up and met a pair of eyes as bright as stars. They were a light, clear color and held a relaxed, easygoing expression, like that of a carefree young man. "She can't drink anymore," he said simply. The hot-headed friend of Adrien sneered. "Who the hell are you? What business is it of yours how Adrien handles his women?" The man tilted his head, looking genuinely puzzled. "Just a concerned passerby," he said lightly. He turned his gaze to Adrien. "Are you forcing her?" Adrien's eyes dropped to the hand that was still holding my wrist. "I didn't realize Ethan was here tonight. he said, his tone shifting slightly. Care for a drink? This is just a private matter. No need for you to concern yourself. Ethan! My wrist stiffened at the name. Having been in Adrien's circle for years, I had heard whispers and stories from the business world. Ethan's family was incredibly powerful, controlling vast territories abroad and commanding respect from both the criminal underworld and legitimate businesses. They had recently decided to move away from their illicit enterprises and were expanding into the domestic market. A few months ago, the family's young heir, Ethan, had returned to the country. All the prominent families had been trying to curry favor with him, but he was known to be reclusive, avoiding social events and returning all invitations unopened. Ethan didn't respond to Adrien directly. Instead, his gaze fell back on me. You broke up? He asked. I nodded mutely, and he replied with a casual nonchalance. Then I'll take her with me. I'll pay for her debt. Clara! Adrien's voice turned dangerously cold. It's your choice. Are you staying, or are you going with him? I only had about 7 or 8 drinks left to finish, but I had no idea how I could possibly repay a favor to a man like Ethan. I thought for a moment, then looked up at him. What do you want in return? Ethan seemed taken aback by my question, then a low chuckle escaped his lips. I was just stepping in to help, that's all. But since you're offering a condition... He raised an eyebrow, a teasing glint in his starlit eyes. I happened to notice on my way in that the roses in the garden are blooming beautifully tonight. Could you perhaps cut one for me? Through the glass door of the bar, Adrien watched their silhouettes fade into the night. The floor around his table was littered with shards of broken glass. He finally looked away, his eyes dangerously dark. Adrien? One of his friends, the hot-headed one, swallowed nervously and offered an apologetic smile. They had found out that I was working at this bar and had come here tonight specifically to cause trouble for me, to humiliate me. Adrien had been determined to teach me a lesson for my disobedience. No one could have predicted that Ethan would step in. With Ethan's immense power and influence backing him, they couldn't dare to touch me now. In fact, they would probably have to find ways to get on his good side. Ethan drove off alone. His secretary leaned in close to Adrien and whispered something in his ear. Adrien's tense expression relaxed slightly. Adrien, I think Clara is really angry this time, someone cautiously ventured. What are you going to do now? Adrien sneered. What? Should I go and coax her? Does she actually think she's my wife? I've spoiled her far too much. This time, I swear she'll come crawling back to me in tears. One of the men winked and grinned suggestively. Adrien, there's no need to get so serious with a woman. Haven't you ever heard that couples fight in bed and make up right after? What do you say? Adrien eyed him skeptically. You've done this before? The man nodded eagerly. I recently got my hands on a new batch of medication. Don't worry, it'll make her completely obedient. And this is the easy part. That brother of Clara's, isn't he always desperate for money? Perhaps I had drunk too much that night. In the days that followed, I developed a high fever and was lost in a delirious, hazy state, unable to fully recover. My dreams were filled with foggy, disjointed shadows. One moment, I was reliving the day Adrien first confessed his feelings to me, when the entire city sky lit up with a brilliant fireworks display just for me. The vibrant colors reflected in his eyes, showing a tenderness I had never seen before. Will you be with me? He had asked. The next moment, I was back in that dimly lit bar, and he was forcing me to kneel and shine his shoes, his voice dripping with contempt. You're just a plaything, and you really think you're going to be Mrs. Sterling? Clara, crawl over here. I woke up with a start, my body drenched in a cold sweat. The sharp, sterile smell of disinfectant filled my nostrils. You're finally awake, a voice said. Leo was leaning against the side of my hospital bed, his voice choked with what sounded like tears. I was so scared. I thought I was going to lose you. Before I could even speak, he started confessing everything, the words spilling out of him in a rush. Mark and the others said they'd show me the world. I just got carried away and went with them. Leo's eyes were red and swollen. It will never happen again, sis. Please, can you forgive me? The visiting nurse who had come in to check my vitals spoke up on his behalf. This young man has been by your side every single day since you were admitted. He's cried quite a few times. He seems very remorseful." I let out a long sigh and ruffled his hair. "Just study hard from now on. Don't let something like this happen again." After I was discharged from the hospital, Leo went back to school and I returned to my job at the bar. The manager, worried about more trouble, moved me to a position in the kitchen, washing glasses, far from the customers. Leo seemed like a completely different person. Every Sunday, when he had a day off from school, he would come to have dinner with me. One particular day, as soon as I walked out of the kitchen, I saw him waiting for me. He hadn't even put his backpack down yet. He was proudly holding up a cup of milk tea. "There's a new milk tea shop near our school," he said with a grin. "Try this one. I think you'll really like it." The next thing I knew, I was waking up in an unfamiliar room. My entire body ached with a profound weakness. The last thing I could remember was the sweet, creamy taste of the milk tea Leo had handed me. I was lying on a large, round waterbed. The walls around me were decorated with an unsettling collection of whips in various sizes, a sight that sent a cold shudder down my spine. It was clearly some sort of themed room. On the bedside table, there was a small note. "Had to step out for a moment. We'll be back later." There was no signature, but I recognized Adrien's distinctive, sharp handwriting immediately. I staggered off the bed, but the door was locked from the outside. My knees buckled and I collapsed to the floor. In the large mirror on the opposite wall, I could see my own reflection. My face was flushed, my eyes glassy. I felt incredibly hot. It was obvious now that milk tea had been laced with something. I bit down hard on my tongue, the sharp pain and the taste of blood helping to clear my head, if only for a moment. I had to escape, and quickly. My frantic eyes scanned the room, finally landing on the balcony. I was on the 4th floor. Below me was a large, shimmering swimming pool, and beyond that, I could see the ornate fountains of what looked like the main entrance to the estate. The night wind was bitterly cold. I shivered and hugged myself tightly. At that exact moment, I heard the electronic lock on the room door click open. Adrien was back. There was no more time to think. I scrambled over the railing of the balcony and jumped. The impact with the water was a heavy, disorienting splash. My breath was stolen from my lungs and my mouth tasted of blood and chlorine. The cold water rushed into my ears and nose as I struggled desperately to swim towards the edge of the pool. As I broke the surface, gasping for air, I looked up and saw Ethan's astonished face. He stared down at me, his eyes wide, then turned to a man in a black suit standing beside him. "George," he said, his voice laced with confusion. "Didn't you say there wasn't going to be a mermaid show tonight?" The middle-aged man, George, looked equally cautious and confused. Just as he was about to speak, Ethan let out a soft chuckle. He leaned over the edge of the pool, extending a hand towards me with a disarming smile. "Does this beautiful mermaid need some assistance from a gentleman?" Seeing me hesitate, he winked. "Don't worry, I won't let you turn into sea foam." Ethan lifted me out of the water as if he were catching a large fish, placing me gently in the back seat of a waiting car. He slid in beside me, humming a tune I didn't recognize. The car's heater was on full blast, and I wrapped myself in Ethan's suit jacket, which he had draped over my shoulders, still shivering as I tried to dry my hair with my hands. "Still cold?" Ethan asked with genuine concern, leaning a little closer. "George, turn up the temperature." I shook my head. "No," I managed to say, my voice weak and breathless. Ethan suddenly seemed to realize something. His eyes widened slightly. "You," he began, looking at me with a new, hesitant understanding. At that moment, the partition between the front and back seats of the car slowly began to lower. "George!" he snapped, his voice sharp with anger. In the faint light from the passing street lamps, I could see that the tips of his ears had turned a deep crimson red. My dripping hair was beginning to soak the expensive leather seats. Ethan's eyes darkened as he looked at the growing water stains. "Ethan," I whispered, my voice trembling as I called his name. A coat suddenly fell over me, and Ethan pulled me into his arms. "Don't talk to men in that tone," he murmured, his voice husky. His fingers brushed against my lips. They were cold and trembling slightly. His next words were a hoarse question. "Is this okay?" An unexplainable, drug-fueled fury burned away the last of my reason. In a dreamy haze, I blurted out, "Aren't you incapable?" There was a moment of absolute silence. Then, Ethan let out an angry, choked chuckle. He whispered in my ear, his voice dangerously sweet but laced with a hint of malice. "Incapable? Perhaps it's you who's incapable." Before opening the door to the room, Adrien had imagined many different scenarios. He pictured how Clara would cry and beg him for forgiveness. He saw her lowering her head in submission, pleading with him not to abandon her. This time, he decided he wouldn't let her off so easily. A cold smirk played on his lips. He was determined to teach her a proper lesson. The electronic lock clicked and the door swung open. The scene inside was nothing like he had imagined. The large waterbed was empty. Adrien raised an eyebrow. Playing hard to get? Interesting. Like a seasoned hunter stalking his prey, he wandered around the room with his hands clasped behind his back. The night breeze billowed the white curtains, momentarily revealing the silhouette of a girl on the balcony. "So, you were hiding here?" Adrien chuckled, dramatically pulling the curtains aside. "I've found you." His voice trailed off abruptly. The balcony was empty. In disbelief, he searched the room again, but found nothing. His eyes then caught the note he had left on the bedside table. There was now an additional sentence scrawled on it. Feigning a calm he did not feel, he picked it up. Below his own words, it now read, "Wait for you? How about you wait for me? At 3 o'clock tonight, you can start the drums and gongs. Keeping vigil for the dead is a family affair, and I'm afraid I can't help with that." He tore the note into tiny pieces, laughing with a mixture of anger and frustration. "Find her," he barked into the intercom. "Check all the surveillance footage. Turn this entire place upside down if you have to." The voice that came back through the intercom was hesitant and stuttering. The bodyguard on the other end froze. "Mr. Sterling, the manor's surveillance system is down." There was a sharp cracking sound as Adrien crushed the wineglass he was holding in his hand. "Great," he seethed. "Just great, Clara." He regained his composure. "Lock down the entire manor. Don't let so much as a fly get out." At the main exit, bodyguards were meticulously inspecting every car that tried to leave. Suddenly, Adrien's gaze fixed on an approaching vehicle. It was a Rolls-Royce Phantom, one of only 3 like it in the entire world. "Sir," the bodyguard's voice was low and cautious. "Should we stop it? It's Mr. Ethan's car." Even the hired help knew not to cross Ethan. Before Adrien could respond, the rear window of the Phantom rolled down slowly. Ethan licked his lips with an air of satisfaction, his voice hoarse with fulfilled desire. "Adrien, we meet again." Ethan was holding a young woman in his arms, but her face was obscured from view. She had long, dark hair that cascaded down, revealing only a small glimpse of her fair-skinned side profile. Adrien's gaze, however, fell on the numerous distinct kiss marks on the back of her neck. Ethan seemed to be in a particularly good mood. He chuckled disdainfully. Word on the street was that Ethan stayed away from women, a true gentleman. But now, it seems those rumors weren't entirely trustworthy, Adrien thought bitterly. Ethan pulled the suit jacket up a little higher, carefully covering the girl's face. "Why judge me by your own standards, Adrien?" His smile was casual, but his words carried a clear warning. "This is my wife. If you'd like to visit, perhaps another time would be better?" As he said this, he leaned down and pressed a gentle kiss to her hair. After a long night of activity, she's completely exhausted. Even long after Ethan's car had driven away, Adrien was left with a lingering sense of unease. The image of that girl's fair neck was seared into his mind. Could it have been Clara? As soon as the thought arose, he forcefully shook his head, dismissing it. In their circle, Clara was just a plaything, a pretty accessory not meant for the serious spotlight. How could she possibly have become the lady of Ethan's house? He felt a surge of troubled frustration, an urge to throw something. He reached for his watch, but his hand stopped midair. This watch had been Clara's gift to him for their 4-year anniversary, just this year. Adrien stared at it expressionlessly for a long, silent moment. His phone rang, breaking the quiet. "Adrien, are you coming to the club?" It was one of his nosy friends who lived for drama. "There's a new young waitress here today. She looks quite a bit like your old flame. Aren't you tired of her yet? Why not switch things up a bit?" In a sudden fit of pique, Adrien yanked the watch from his wrist, threw it out the car window, and slammed his foot on the gas pedal. "I'm coming!" he snarled into the phone. "Get the most expensive drinks. Tonight is on me." He thought to himself, "Clara, don't you dare regret this." When I woke up, the sun was already setting on the next day. My body felt clean and had been tended to with medication. I was dressed in a set of comfortable, soft clothes. I fumbled for my phone on the bedside table. As soon as the screen lit up, dozens of unread messages popped up. They were all photos sent by Adrien's so-called buddies. I opened them one by one. They showed Adrien in a dimly lit private room, with a girl sitting on his lap, the two of them kissing. It was a deliberately provocative scene, captured in over 20 photos, ensuring I couldn't possibly miss the message. A text accompanied the images. "Clara, don't bite the hand that feeds you. If you don't come back, Adrien will surely find a new love. There are plenty of young and docile girls around. You really think you're so special? Let him find them then. Pathetic clown," I typed back. Then I blocked the number. The entire process was done in one fluid, emotionless motion. At that moment, I heard the sound of soft footsteps from the other room, followed by Ethan's voice, deliberately lowered. "Is everything cleaned up?" "Yes, boss, it's all been taken care of," another voice replied. "Good," Ethan responded coolly. "Don't let Clara find out about any of this. She's too soft-hearted." I suddenly asked aloud, my own voice surprising me. "What shouldn't I find out?" The conversation in the other room stopped abruptly. A few seconds later, Ethan walked in, looking sharp and composed in a perfectly tailored suit. "Are you still feeling unwell?" he asked, a hint of nervousness in his eyes. I shook my head and asked again, "What were you two talking about just now?" The bodyguard standing beside him glanced awkwardly at Ethan, who let out a soft sigh. "We were just taking care of Adrien and your brother," he admitted. "Adrien's men bribed Leo to drug you." Even though I had already pieced most of it together myself, hearing the truth confirmed with my own ears still felt like a sharp needle piercing my heart. Ethan scrutinized my expression, his own brows furrowing slightly, clearly distressed by the situation. "After all," he said gently, "he is your brother. How you want to handle him is ultimately up to you." "So what did you do?" I asked quietly. Ethan blinked at me with a look of pure innocence. "So I had his legs broken," he said, as if it were the most logical thing in the world. "Where is he?" I asked again. Ethan hesitated, then carefully leaned a little closer to me. "Are you mad that I acted on my own?" I managed a bitter smile and shook my head. "No, I just want to see him. There are some things I need to say to him face to face." Ethan seemed to sigh in relief. Then I heard myself speaking again, my voice soft and distant. "Thank you, Ethan." It was polite but cool, a clear and heartless dismissal. For a moment, he was stunned, and his handsome face turned visibly pale. "What did you just call me?" he asked, his voice tight. He gritted his teeth and pressed his hands down on the blanket covering me. He then leaned down and bit my collarbone, not hard enough to break the skin, but like a little wolf marking its territory. "You sleep with me and then try to run? You use me and then just toss me aside?" Though his expression was fierce, his tone was almost on the verge of tears. "You called me honey all last night and now you want to pretend you don't know me?" Thinking back to the hazy, feverish events of the previous night, I gritted my teeth as well. "Was it my idea to call you that? Adults have mutual understandings about these things. Good riddance, and no hard feelings." Ethan knew he was in the wrong and stayed silent for a moment. Then he said stubbornly, "I don't care. You have to take responsibility for me." I silently reached up and removed my hearing aid, shaking my head. "Sorry, I can't hear you." He looked flustered, gesturing wildly at me, but no words came out. Frustrated, he began to pace around the room before pinning me down again. He looked down at me and his fingers began to move rapidly. For a second, I thought he was so angry that he had resorted to jazz hands. He pried my lips open roughly. It was only then that I realized he was using sign language. "I'll kiss you until you agree to take responsibility." When I saw Leo, I was still wearing a medical mask. His legs were wrapped in heavy casts, and he was lying listlessly on the hospital bed. When he saw me enter the room, he sneered and stretched out a hand. "You're back! Where's the money?" Without a word, I raised my hand and slapped him hard across the face. A red handprint quickly bloomed on his right cheek. He spat out a bit of blood and then laughed maliciously. Did I hit a nerve? Or maybe he just thinks you're filthy and didn't give you a single dime. I ignored his taunts and asked calmly, "Why did you drug me?" Leo's eyes filled with a raw, ugly hatred. "Adrien treats you so well. Why are you making such a big fuss about leaving him? What more could you possibly want? Now look at what's happened. Everyone knows Adrien dumped you, and now everyone despises me because of it." The boy in front of me, my own brother, was still laughing. My fingers trembled. "Leo," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. I slapped him again, forcing myself to remain calm. "You're 20 years old now. From this moment on, I will not give you a single cent. Starting today, I don't have a brother anymore. People look down on you because you deserve it. You're scum." Leo shouted back angrily. "Clara, you're so cold-blooded. How can you do this to your own brother? You really are a heartless bitch." Just as Ethan walked into the room, he heard Leo's last words. "You have deep feelings for Adrien, though," Ethan said with a smirk that sent a shiver down my spine. "If you're so attached to Adrien, how about I send you over to him to play with?" "Was it you?" Leo's pupils shrank in terror as he trembled and tried to back away as if reliving some immense fear. "No, please don't. I was wrong." He turned to me, his eyes pleading for help. "Clara, please save me." I just watched him coldly, feeling nothing but a profound chill inside me. "Too late," Ethan said softly. "I have contacts with other big bosses too. Since you seem to like this sort of thing so much, you can experience it with each of them one by one." Removing Leo from my life made my future plans feel clear and simple. The acceptance letter from a university, which I had received 5 years ago, was still tucked away at the bottom of a box. A university was the nation's most prestigious art school, and its tuition fees were not cheap. After Leo had failed his high school entrance exams and ended up in an expensive private school, I had been forced to put my own education on hold to work and support him. But now, I didn't need to do that anymore. I re-enrolled and successfully applied for a student loan. This year, my life was finally going to restart. That night, while Ethan was out at a social function, I secretly booked a flight and packed a small bag. I boarded a plane to City A alone. Ethan had just started to experience what felt like love, and he was completely obsessed with me. He wanted to be with me constantly, acting as if he would pluck the stars from the sky if I asked him to. But I knew better than anyone that we had no real future together. I was not going to make the same mistake twice. As Adrien had so cruelly pointed out, powerful men like them could give me anything in the world except a legitimate status, a place by their side as an equal. Ethan was the heir to an incredibly wealthy and influential family. There was simply no way he would ever marry a nobody like me. The final boarding call echoed through the terminal. The plane was about to take off. I gazed out the window at the glittering city lights below, thinking quietly to myself, "Goodbye, Ethan. It was nice knowing you." The next moment, I smelled a familiar, comforting scent. Luckily, I ran fast. A voice panted beside me, or I would have missed it. Ethan collapsed into the empty seat next to me, breathing heavily. Noticing my stunned gaze, he turned and gave me a faint, tired smile that still sparkled like the stars. "Otherwise," he added, "I wouldn't have been able to catch you." I just stared at him, dumbfounded. "What are you doing here?" "Eloping," he said simply. He pointed to his small carry-on suitcase, looking very proud of himself. "Don't worry, I brought all my belongings." "What?" I was momentarily speechless, staring at him blankly. Ethan thought I was asking what he had brought with him and began to tick off items on his fingers. Some cash, a few property deeds, some gold bars, a bit of jewelry. As for my bank cards, they've all been frozen. He straightened up with a look of pride. My dad was so mad he's actually flying back to the country just to beat me. I have no home to go back to now. "So this time," he finished, his expression turning serious. You have to take responsibility for me. 3 years later, in City A, Ethan had successfully expanded his family's business into the region and had, over the years, managed to reconcile with his family to some degree. That December, he hosted a grand banquet to celebrate his success. At the time, I was hiding in a quiet corner, happily eating muffins. Ethan was busy making the rounds and socializing, but he still found the time to text me a stream of complaints. Ethan, Clara, you're eating all by yourself again. Ethan, save me a bite of that coffee muffin. I raised an eyebrow and typed back a reply, stifling a laugh. Clara, are you a puppy? Why would I share my peace with you? I was still smiling at my phone when a deep, familiar voice suddenly spoke in front of me. Clara! The speaker's shadow fell over me, and his tone was thick with a long suppressed anger. Adrien stood before me, staring down at me with cold, hard eyes. It seemed he was also a guest at tonight's banquet. I turned off my phone screen and calmly looked up at him. Adrien, if I remember correctly, we broke up 3 years ago. Broke up? He looked as though he had just heard the most hilarious joke in the world, and he laughed with a bitter anger. Did I ever agree to the breakup? I cursed silently under my breath and turned to leave. A sharp pain shot through my arm as he grabbed me, and in the next moment he had pinned me against the wall. Clara, don't break up with me, he pleaded, his eyes turning red as he clutched my wrist tightly. I admit it, you win. Just come back with me, okay? I frowned and tried to shake off his hand. Let go of me. I can give you anything, he said, his words rushed and desperate. Really? Don't you want to be my wife? We can have a child together and then I'll marry you, okay? A cold, amused voice from behind us responded. Does Mr. Sterling have something on his mind, staring at my wife like that? Adrien sneered at Ethan's words. So, Mr. Liu enjoys taking other men's wives, does he? Ethan ignored him completely and looked at me with his signature puppy dog eyes, the same pleading expression he used whenever he wanted a kiss. Clara, he whined, now even wild men are coming after you. Are you still not going to give me a proper title? I shook off Adrien's grip once and for all. Under his bewildered gaze, I instinctively began to soothe Ethan. I have no idea where this wild man came from, I sighed. Besides, haven't you already got a title? It's been 3 years since I first got stuck with a certain puppy named Lou. Are you not angry anymore, okay? Ethan was easily pacified. He shot a cold, dismissive glance at Adrien and snorted disdainfully. If he had a tail, I was sure it would have been wagging furiously right now. Adrien, did you hear that? I asked. Adrien's face went white, as if he was suddenly remembering something. That night, the person in the car with him, was that? The answer was painfully obvious. Clara, he growled, his eyes turning a furious blood red like those of a wounded beast. Fine. So it was a seamless transition for you then. How dare you? I looked at him calmly. Do you remember the day we first met? Your first love, Evelyn, had just gotten engaged. You were drowning your sorrows in booze, and then you met me. The very next day, you came looking for me, saying you wanted to pursue me. I gave a light, emotionless laugh. When it comes to seamless transitions, who could possibly beat you, Adrien? Adrien opened and closed his mouth, but no words came out. After a long, tense silence, he couldn't help but ask, his voice filled with genuine confusion. So what were our 4 years together for then? His right arm tightened around my waist, and Ethan, my little dog, looked at me with a wounded, grudging expression. I patted his curly hair to soothe him. Turning my head back to Adrien, I sighed with theatrical regret. That was just my bad luck. Adrien stood there frozen for a long time. The great air had been so domineering, and now this man had taken Clara away without a word. Despicable, he thought, his expression completely blank. During the 3 years that Clara had vanished, he had nearly turned Sea City upside down searching for her. There was no news, no trace of her anywhere. Clara had completely disappeared from his world as if she had never existed at all. But all the gifts he had ever given her were still placed neatly in the room where she used to live, constant, silent reminders that Clara had abandoned him. At first, Adrien couldn't get used to life without Clara. He went to clubs every night, trying to get drunk enough to forget. His buddies knew what he was going through and kept introducing new girls to him. As long as they resembled Clara in either their looks or their personality, he didn't refuse any of them. But he soon grew tired of this empty lifestyle. Because Clara was unique. No one could ever replace her. Clara was always so obedient. When he would take off her hearing aid, she would just look back at him quietly, her eyes wide. Adrien knew that look meant she was scared. But what had he done at that time? Adrien painfully recalled how he had whispered nonstop in her ear, confessing his undying love to his unreachable first crush. "Evelyn, I like you. I love you so much. Evelyn, will you marry me? Evelyn, you nodded. Didn't you agree?" So many sweet, loving words, but not a single one had ever been meant for Clara. If he had known anything about respect, he would have understood that every person is an individual. No one wants to be a substitute for someone else. But he didn't understand that. In the high-stakes game of love and fame that he played, genuine feelings were the least important thing. It wasn't until she left him so decisively that it finally dawned on him that perhaps, somewhere along the way, he had actually fallen in love with Clara. He had always been self-centered, thinking that whoever he chose to like should feel honored. He was completely unaware that delayed affection is utterly worthless. "Sir, would you like some champagne?" The waiter's polite voice brought him back to reality. In the distance, he saw Ethan introducing Clara to his business partners. He took a sip of his drink, and his heart began to ache with a belated, sharp pain. "Clara," he thought desperately, "how could you be so heartless? How could you just leave me?" Ethan noticed his lingering gaze and gave him a sinister warning look. Before Clara could notice, he affectionately took her hand, his body positioning itself to block Adrien's view. What a hypocrite, Adrien sneered to himself. Soon, a group of imposing bodyguards surrounded him. "Mr. Sterling, please come with us." He raised an eyebrow. "What's this? Has Clara had a change of heart and wants to see me?" At that moment, Ken felt an immense surge of pride. Clara was the rose he had personally nurtured. How could she not acknowledge him? He thought that Clara would probably laugh so hard at his arrogant words that she'd bend over. "Don't! You mustn't say that. It's so insensitive." He chuckled inwardly to himself. "All right, take me to her." Adrien adjusted his tie and looked up expectantly at the bodyguards. The men looked awkwardly at each other before the youngest one finally spoke up. "No, sir, we're here to escort you out." The young intern bodyguard said it honestly, his face a picture of pure innocence. "Our master says this place is not welcoming to rejected suitors who are still eyeing Miss Clara. He says it's bad for the feng shui." Adrien frowned, recalling Ethan's earlier warning. Then he mentally replayed the threat, a cold finger running across his own neck in his mind. "Peek at Clara again, and you'll be fish food." 3 months later, Adrien was sent to a remote, undeveloped island by his family's elders. They called it expanding the business horizon. Expand what business horizon? Go compete for territory with the monkeys? I wondered, puzzled when I heard the news. Doesn't this just mean he's been exiled? Ethan, who had been listening to my muttering, cleared his throat. "Who knows? It's probably just karma." I raised an eyebrow and glanced at him. Ever since Adrien had shown up at the banquet that day, Ethan's possessiveness towards me had only grown stronger. It was like he was constantly feeling insecure or something. Every time I tried to talk to him seriously about it, he would get all whiny and clingy. "Clara, are you getting sick of me? You bad woman, you think you've got it so easy now. You're done for. Do you know what the consequences are? Nothing happens. How about that? It's like punching cotton. It's warm, right?" Ethan would act all dramatic, talking complete nonsense. "I'm a guy. I don't like you. I like Adrien." Before he could even finish the sentence, his face would change, and he'd look like he was about to be sick. I couldn't figure it out, until one day I found a book hidden under his pillow. Men Who Act Coy Live the Best Lives. And you would think he was just reading it? Nope, he wrote it. The mystery was finally solved. I found myself sweating a little bit too. Another 6 months passed. One day, I received a call from Ben, one of Adrian's good buddies. Clara! The voice on the phone choked out. I recognized it as the same guy who had mocked and humiliated me at the bar. I calmly warned him. The voice on the other end paused, then became angry. Clara, you cold-hearted woman? Can you just come and see Adrien? The voice became pleading. Adrien can't get over you. He's turned to alcohol. He's drowning himself in it every single day. He's never sober, and his family sent him to this awful, desolate place. He's almost completely ruined. Clara, only you can save him. Please, can you just help him? I flat out refused. No, haven't you ever heard the saying, let go of your savior complex and respect the destinies of others? The guy on the other end tried to argue, but I just laughed lightly. You should know, I'm with Ethan now, and he's pretty hostile towards other guys. If you keep bothering me, the next person who gets sent out to a remote island could be you. The line went silent. That was the last time I ever heard anything about Adrien. After that, the clouds finally parted and the skies in my life cleared. After I graduated from university, I smoothly landed a job at a top animation company. Ethan was excitedly driving, insisting that we had to go out and celebrate. It was only when I got out of the car and saw a crowd of our friends cheering and holding up signs that I realized something else was going on. No dodging this time and no taking off your hearing aids. This is important, someone shouted from the crowd. Ethan nervously knelt down on one knee in front of me. He started rambling, saying a lot of things I can't quite recall. Then, his voice became clear and steady. Clara, I love everything about you. I love your wholeness, and I love your imperfections. Will you marry me? I blinked, a teasing smile playing on my lips. Ethan, that's a very big title you're asking for. He raised an eyebrow slightly. So, are you going to give it to me? I leaned in close and whispered in his ear. I'll give you the title, but you have to give me your heart in return, okay? Ethan blinked, and then a broad, brilliant smile spread across his face. Are you even asking? Half of my heart was already with you from the moment we first met. His answer piqued my curiosity. And what about the other half? Ethan's Adam's apple bobbed slightly and his gaze deepened. He chuckled lightly. The other half, he said, his voice dropping to an intimate whisper. I gave it to a beautiful mermaid lady when we met for the second time. Our eyes met, and my ears turned red. It felt like a gentle, romantic evening breeze was blowing in, just for us. I smiled. Really? Then I suppose I had better keep it safe. Of course, Ethan said. He took my hand and brought it to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss against my skin. Miss, please guard it well, and then please love me for 100 years.